Hi, this is Ernesto Burden, publisher of Military and Aerospace Electronics, and I'm here with our chief editor, John Keller, for this week's Rapid Fire. John, welcome back from the long Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, well, I think we all survived it. But it's interesting. It's kind of bittersweet. It's the end of summer. It's the end of hot dogs and soft serve ice cream, and time to get back to work.
That's true. Although I always look forward to this time of year. I wake up thinking that I would like true fall to descend upon New England, not this 90-degree false fall that we seem to be enduring right now. I want frost on the grass, want pumpkins, crisp apples, the whole deal.
Well, the colors are changing, and it's snowing in Wyoming, so we're getting there.
On our way. Okay, well, and today we have a thematic day. All of the stories that you've chosen for us today fall under the broad topic of the Navy.
It's interesting. Over the last month or so, and it's been striking me that a lot of the contracts and the solicitations, particularly as it has to do with aviation, are being led by the Navy. It seems like there's been, in electronics technology anyway, there's been much more action going on from the Navy than certainly the Army and the Air Force. One of the reasons for that is Naval Air Systems Command at Patuxent River, Maryland. They seem to be handling quite a bit of the contracting for a lot of aircraft and avionics subsystems that are also for the Navy, for the Air Force, as well as the Navy and the Marine Corps. And NavAir also is handling contract awards for foreign military sales. So, but evidently the Navy's got money to spend, so that's what they're doing.
Interesting. Well, I was going to give you a little tidbit of naval history to kick this off then, since this is Navy Day here at Military and Aerospace Electronics. Did you know on this day, September 2nd, in 1944, the U.S. Finback rescued a young Lieutenant George H.W. Bush, who was shot down while attacking Chichijima. Did you?
Well, I did, but I've seen the newsreels. Back in the not to date myself, but it's getting hard not to do that anymore. Back in the, I think it was the 1988 campaign. I remember seeing some of the newsreels. There was some, grainy black and white footage that was actually shot. Now that vessel was a submarine, wasn't it?
The Finback?
Yeah,
I don't actually know.
I think it was actually. I think it actually was a submarine, and from somebody with a movie camera up on the sail of the submarine, there's footage of George Bush getting plucked out of the water from his little survival raft there. So, and that was a nice little ancillary to the '88 campaign.
No doubt.
But I didn't know it was today, but I knew the Second World War started actually yesterday, September 1st, 1939, when the Nazis rolled into Poland. So a lot of military type anniversaries.
No doubt. Well,
I guess Hitler needed to wait till after Labor Day, though. So.
Yeah, they had barbecue and hot dogs and hamburgers and all that.
Well, I mean, and you don't want to interrupt that for something like invading a small country, so I understand.
Everything's on hold until the end of August.
Well, as it is today. I mean, some of these historic precedents there, they hold steady.
Yeah. So, first story that we have today, Navy chooses 5 companies to build shipboard networking equipment as part of Keynes program. What's the Keynes program?
Well, the Keynes program, it's short for Consolidated Afloat Networks and Enterprise Services. What that essentially is it's an overhaul of the Navy's shipboard type command control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, that type of heavy IT type of technology. And Northrop Grumman has been selected more than a year ago, I think, as to be the overall Kane system architect, and I believe it's Northrop Grumman that is actually involved in installing Kane's hardware aboard surface vessels. And I think there's been 9 or 10, perhaps more, of the Navy surface vessels, cruisers, destroyers, whatnot, that have been outfitted thus far with Kane's equipment. But it's such a large program that the Navy is choosing 5 other companies. Let me see, they're BAE Systems Technology Solutions and Services, General Dynamics C4 Systems, Global Technical Systems, and Northrop, a different division of Northrop Grumman, and Serco Incorporated. Now these 5 companies are going to manufacture a lot of that Kane's equipment for installation aboard the ships. The Navy's got several hundred ships in the inventory, not as many as they used to, of course, but they're very sophisticated vessels, and it's not an insignificant endeavor to switch out a lot of this equipment. But once finished, the Navy shipboard data networking is going to be state of the art. They'll be able to do things like hand off targets from the sensors of one ship to another, and it will involve unprecedented situational awareness, surveillance, reconnaissance, that type of thing. So it's a lot of money. It was for a potential $638 million among these 5 companies over several years. Now they're going to compete for different orders, so everybody is going to get a guaranteed minimum in this, but essentially they're going to compete for different orders to manufacture Kane's equipment, and that'll be happening over, I think, the next 5+ years.
Okay, so our next 2 stories, they're both torpedo stories. You've got a piece here about Raytheon getting a contract to repair and upgrade the Navy's inventory of Mark 54 air-launched torpedoes, and Lockheed Martin Sipacan to provide kits to upgrade Navy's inventory of submarine-launched torpedoes. What ties those 2 stories together?
Well, it struck me, and you had these 2 fairly sizable contracts to upgrade the Navy's inventories of torpedoes. It happened, within about a week's time. The Navy has a couple of different kind of torpedoes. These are primarily for anti-submarine warfare, not quite so much for anti-surface warfare, because I think the Navy relies primarily on missiles to handle that job. But the Navy has a lightweight torpedo. I believe it's the Mark 54, and this is something that Raytheon is going to be repairing and upgrading. The Mark 54 is a relatively small torpedo. It's primarily for fixed-wing aircraft and helicopter launch use. Also, you can launch it from torpedo tubes aboard some surface vessels. But one of the problems that they were having with this torpedo is it worked just fine out in the blue water, but it was suspect. Its performance was suspect in the so-called littoral areas. Some people call that the littoral areas, and what that means is areas along coasts, within harbors, essentially shallow water operations, where as far as a torpedo is concerned, it's a very difficult environment. There's a lot of noise in the shallow water, a lot of small surface craft, a lot of snags on the bottom, sometimes wrecks. Very difficult, much different environment than out in the open ocean. Raytheon's going to be making some signal processing upgrades to these torpedoes to make them more lethal than ever. And also at the same, almost within the same week, Lockheed Martin Sipacan got a contract to do some major upgrades on the Navy's Mark 48 torpedo. Now this is the heavyweight torpedo that's the primary anti-submarine armament of attack submarines, and even it can be fitted on ballistic missile and cruise missile submarines. These also are going to get some navigation improvements. They're going to be having some sonar improvements, and what's essentially going on here is the Navy is extending the life significantly of its inventory of torpedoes, and the fact that it happened almost during the same week really leads me to believe that the Navy is starting to get very serious about boosting up its anti-submarine warfare capability. So, to my eye, that's good news.
What do you think some of the triggers are for that? What are there specific spots around the world or specific areas of conflict that call specifically for that kind of technology?
Well, you know, there have been isolated incidents. The one that immediately comes to mind happened. Can't remember, a couple of years ago. There was a Navy aircraft carrier battle group out on maneuvers, and there was a Chinese attack submarine that surfaced very close. Even it could have been inside the battle group, and to my understanding, that submarine had not been detected. If that was an actual wartime situation, that submarine would wreak havoc on a carrier battle group. You could, you know, once you start losing aircraft carriers, that's a very serious problem, because I think there's only, 10 or 12 aircraft carriers available, and not all of them are at sea at any one time. So the aircraft carrier is one of the most valuable military assets that this nation has, and if you've got a potentially hostile attack submarine that can get close enough to surface inside a battle group in a wartime situation, that would be very, very bad. And I think that's among the reasons that the Navy is really trying to boost up its anti-submarine warfare capability. A lot of developments are going on in this area. The U.S. fast attack submarines, ballistic missile submarines, they're all nuclear powered, but the rest of the world doesn't take that same approach. There are some very, very quiet diesel electric submarines now that, although they may not be able to operate globally as the U.S. submarines can, in their home waters they are almost silent. So and this type of technology is proliferating, you know, from allies and trusted friends to people who might not be so. You've got India that's got a fairly sizable and capable submarine force. I don't think it's going to be too long before countries like Iran and whatnot that are openly hostile to U.S. interests might have some of this technology. And like I said, these submarines may not be able to operate, you know, over months at a time submerged, but over, you know, a period of, say, 3 days to 3 weeks, they can be difficult, if not impossible, to detect. And if you have an opposing submarine force that simply can't be detected or is very, very difficult to detect, that places U.S. carrier battle groups in dire jeopardy. And functionally what that would do is that forces the carrier battle groups to operate farther and farther from their areas of interest. That means if you need to launch an airstrike with the fighter bombers on the decks of those carriers, it needs to be done from farther away. It complicates logistics. You have all kinds of issues with mid-air refueling, all kinds of logistics issues like that. So it's a very big deal, and I think the Navy wants to reestablish its prowess as the leading anti-submarine warfare power on the earth.
So that brings us to the last story that we have here, which is Navy authorizes Textron to start building one of its first Lcac replacement vessels. What is an Lcac vessel?
Well, the Lcac essentially it's a when you look back at the newsreels from the Second World War and the invasion of Europe, the landings on Omaha Beach, they had very different kinds of landing craft. These were landing craft that were essentially boats in the water. The Lcac is something different. It's essentially a fairly large hovercraft. It can take Marines and soldiers. It can take all kinds of equipment. It can even take heavily armored vehicles, and it has the range to launch these type of from the sea type land attack from over the horizon, actually from a long way away. Now the Lcac has been in the inventory for quite a long time, since at least the 1970s, maybe even before that. The Navy over the last several years has had several programs in place to extend the lifetime of these Lcacs, and a lot of that has involved electronics, single board computers, things like that. Our friends at AI Tech and Tracewell Systems and others have a stake in some of that. Now, however, the Lcacs were designed with 30-year life cycles, and they're up against that and exceeding it now. So it's going to be essentially the same type of design, although I think it's going to be a little bit bigger. Their payload capacity is going to be increased from 60, I think, to 74 tons. That's a lot of payload for warfighters and weapons and armored combat vehicles and things like that. I believe the idea is there are 73 Lcacs in the inventory now, and the Navy wants to replace those. These new type of Lcacs, also, in addition to having a bigger payload, are going to have better sea-keeping capabilities. They'll be able to perform better in rough seas. I believe their command and control, propulsion, those types of things, it's really going to be a soup-to-nuts type of upgrade. So, we have an interesting situation where the Navy not only is bolstering its anti-submarine warfare capability, but also the Marine Corps land attack capability. So it was interesting to see all these things happen, within the course of just a couple of weeks.
Okay. Yes, not just the items in that last story, but all of these Navy pieces coming together like this.
Oh yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you, John, and that brings us to the end of the program for today. And I did just want to mention we have coming up on September 9th, which is next Tuesday, a webcast that we're going to be presenting, sponsored by our friends at Curtis Wright, and the topic of conversation is going to be meeting the Gen 3 backplane challenge with OpenVPX and COTS. And again, that's September 9th. So anybody who's interested in that topic, who'd find it helpful. And John, who are some of the folks who that would apply most to?
Oh, it's going to apply to all kinds of people, and including some of the people that we've been talking about. It's a general trend where the military services across the board want to include commercial off-the-shelf type electronics in things like Lcacs, things like torpedo upgrades, those types of things. So the DoD across the board is looking for commercial off-the-shelf systems upgrades, and Gen 3 VPX, single-board computers, backplanes, high-speed switch networks, these are going to be at the core of a lot of these system upgrades. So it's very topical and very timely.
Okay, great. Thank you. For anybody interested in that, it's come on over to militaryaerospace.com and click on webcasts, and you'll see the link to register. And John, welcome to fall.
All right.
And,
whether we like it or not.
Exactly. I'll talk to you next time.
Okay.